guess we're going to find out if I'm smart enough to do this as well. So, can you all hear me okay?
No.
Mic needs to look closer to your mouth.
All right. Let me adjust it here a little bit. I promise you will hear me now. All right. Well, I was saying before the meeting started, it's been a long time since I've been to Gateway here in Mount Sterling. And I guess the last time I was here, all the fellows wore this little piece of cloth around your neck. It was called a tie. And all the songs that we sang came out of this little book that was in the pew. It was called a hymnal. So that kind of lets you all know. My name is Charles. I'm a grateful believer in Jesus Christ, whose struggles include alcohol, codependency, and most days, overwhelming feelings of grief and loss.
Hey, Charles.
Glad to be here with you all tonight. My father was a Christian church minister, and my mother worked full-time in the home to raise a family of 7 children, the youngest born with Down syndrome. We came to Kentucky in 1973 when my parents learned about a school at the University of Kentucky for mentally handicapped children. The Bluegrass Christian Camp offered my dad a job as the camp minister, and so we moved. A few years later, I remember one day after school, instead of getting on the bus as usual, our dad was there to pick me and my younger brother up. He explained to us that the pain my younger brother Corey had been experiencing had finally been identified, and it was leukemia, a type of cancer. I asked him what the cure was, and he explained that there really wasn't one. And I didn't accept that. I couldn't. In 1975, I lost my only living grandparent, and I did not process that loss very well. I remember going to the funeral home, but refusing to go inside. Later that same year, I lost a very dear aunt, and our family hardly acknowledged the loss. We were not the kind of family that shared our feelings or our emotions, and we were not handling Corey's leukemia very well. I didn't know it at that time, but I was in denial. I think we all were. The chemo and the radiation took their toll on my little brother. He would cry in pain all night, and my mother would stay up and hold him. So I started to believe and pray for a miracle. I knew God was hearing me and would answer my prayers. I made up my mind, and I promised myself and God that I would never marry, but instead I would spend the rest of my life caring for my brother. But eventually, the cancer came out of remission, and it wouldn't let go. And I prayed, God, please don't take my brother. Please don't take my brother. God, please don't let him die. Please. But on a cold January 2nd in 1978, in the morning, my brother Corey died. He died, and I felt like it was because my faith had not been strong enough. I was only 14, but the Bible was clear that nothing is impossible with God, and that if you pray in faith, you will receive. And I believed that. What happened? I was really hurt. I wouldn't know what it was called until years later, and with lots of expensive counseling, but I defensively detached from those feelings. I learned how to turn them off. It was all I knew how to do to survive. See, the pain was unbearable. And it worked. Well, for a time. I became cold-hearted. Later on in life, I decided that I was interested in girls after all. And a man came to the camp and he preached and he taught about dating and marriage. And he told us that we should pray for our future mate. And I did that. I prayed that God would provide the perfect mate for me and that we would be happy together for the rest of our lives. Not too long after that, one day I walked into my junior high algebra class and was struck by lightning by this beautiful transfer student from New York, and it was love at first sight. I knew in that moment that this was the girl for me. God did answer that prayer, and her name is Yvonne. I'd been planning to graduate high school a year early, and I was on track to do that, but in my junior year, this girl that I had instantly fallen in love with finally started to notice me. We started seeing each other and love blossomed. We shared the pain of loss of siblings and could relate to and understand each other. After high school, her family returned to New York. She had an apartment, and we were planning to be married in the future. And given the circumstance, we decided that there was no real reason to wait. So at the age of 18, we eloped. Now, being married at 18, working full-time, and going to college was not easy. But we worked hard, and somehow I eventually graduated. Soon we bought a home, and I started to earn more money. Before long, we had a little girl, and she was the perfect child. More work and more success, and we decided to build a larger home. We bought a brand new car and a boat. We were living the American dream. But after losing a child to miscarriage and having trouble conceiving again, there was an emptiness until it finally happened and our son David was born. And I was gradually learning how to enjoy life again. Then something happened, and for the sake of time, I won't go into all of the details, but I was wrongfully accused of an inappropriate behavior with my daughter. And let me tell you, this was a very deep hurt. The pain was so great that all of my defensive detachments kicked in again, and I stuffed those feelings, but this time, along with all my feelings. I was cold-hearted again, but this time, big time. A job opportunity out of state presented itself, and it promised to be a short 6 to 9 month assignment, and the money helped our plan. I put all of myself into my work, and that 6 to 9 months stretched on to 3.5 years, and began a long downward spiral that we're still recovering from. See, I could no longer stuff all of my pain or bury it with work, and so I began to drink. A lot. Throughout all of this, my family relationships suffered. My marriage suffered, and I had less and less joy in my life. I would go on to land another job that would require expensive travel, and then on again, off again, drinking returned. I traded compulsive behaviors many times. Sober for long stretches, followed by heavy drinking. Alternating with overeating, compulsive planning, overscheduling, and worry. I was actually developing more character defects to mask my pain. Never dealing with the underlying hurts. I knew that something had to change, but I didn't know what. I didn't know how. In November of 2014, a series of events led our son David to confess to us that he'd been using drugs and needed help. He confessed to the police to stealing pain medicine from a family friend, and that began a long journey through drug court, treatment, and a variety of facilities. I made many mistakes that I wish I could go back and correct. I tried what I knew to try, I just didn't know. At the beginning of 2017, a counselor suggested that we try this thing called Celebrate Recovery. Yvonne considered it before I did. She said she thought it would be helpful. We went to our first CR in January of 2017, and I was not sure what to expect. It was very different from AA, but also very different from church. We left after a large group, but we came back, and we went to Celebrate Recovery 101, and I've tried to attend every week since then. When Step Study was announced, I was eager to join, and little did I know what the next few months would bring to life. See, all my life I had learned about Jesus, but now something was changing. Now I felt like I didn't need to know more about Jesus. I needed to know him and have a closer walk with him. Growing up in the church where everyone pretended that they were fine, the Christian F word, and no one ever confessed their sins, made me feel like I really wasn't good enough, that Jesus was probably very disappointed with me. I loved God, and I loved Jesus, but I kept on sinning. But here at Celebrate Recovery, I had discovered a group of people who acted like they embraced forgiveness. Like it says in the Bible, God's power is made perfect in our weakness. Working through Step Study was life-changing. Proverbs 27:17 says, "As iron sharpens iron, so one man sharpens another." And I experienced that. We became more than a temporary group. We became stepbrothers. Like the disciples, we were just regular people who failed Jesus again and again, and yet he called them brothers and friends. I needed to get closer to this brother, to this friend. My higher power considers me a friend. That's pretty awesome. Developing my inventory during step 4 was very hard, and it took me a lot longer than I thought it would. Through prayer, scriptures, and the questions and promptings in the material, I identified hurts I had forgotten about, hang-ups that I wasn't fully aware of, and character defects that I either did not identify before or had pretended did not exist. It turned out I had stuffed a lot more than my feelings. And like they say, it's a process, and we make progress, but not perfection. God wasted no time in showing me opportunities for service through Celebrate Recovery. Printing material, greeting, distributing Bibles, cooking meals, running slides, sound, whatever needed to be done. I was anxious for the next men's steps that it begin, and I offered to co-lead that. Let me tell you, if a large group is where recovery is poured on, Step Study is where we rub it in. Since then, I have completed 4.75 step studies. I'm in my 5th one right now, including leading 2. I've completed my 4th step inventory and dropped my 5th on 7 separate occasions. I helped launch a Celebrate Recovery group at Capital City Christian Church in 2021, and most recently in 2023 helped launch at Northside Christian Church in Georgetown. But on August the 18th, 2022, at 3:20 p.m., I would hear 2 words that would change my life forever. Now, I know this is my testimony, but you need to understand the background of my son David's journey to better understand. So please bear with me. David was sexually abused by my brother when he was little. We didn't know about it until years later when a counselor helped him work through it. But that event started a series of struggles that never ended. David was small for his age, and he was bullied in school. We tried moving him to a private school, but he was picked on there as well. When he began to experience feelings and attractions that were different from other boys, he prayed hard. He was rebaptized and rededicated his life to Christ. But it seemed like everyone was against him, including many in our church. David had a tender heart and a troubled mind because of what he had endured. And seeking some escape through drugs led him to a place that he did not like. But later he did manage to achieve sobriety and maintain it for long stretches of time. At the beginning of the pandemic, he lost his job as a waiter at Malone's in Lexington because they closed. He was experiencing a myriad of physical pain that the doctors just could not explain. His counselor suggested that he visit a hypnotherapist in hopes of finding relief. And it helped at first, or it seemed to. But then over time, this therapist led him to believe stories that are hard to even think about. She convinced him that he was suffering from a dissociative identity disorder and that he had multiple personalities. So for close to a year, he descended into a shattered shell of a person under her care. Finally, he realized he was harming him when people online read his comments and came to his rescue. But the damage was substantial. He found another counselor and began working to undo the harm. A film crew from New York even came to interview him and our family for a documentary exposing the dangers of these practitioners. In 2021, he moved back into our home, started working his dream job at Lush Cosmetics in Lexington. He was working the program through NA and had just established a relationship with a new sponsor. Life was finally starting to turn in the right direction. Our prayers for his healing seemed like they were finally being answered. We went hiking on his birthday, August 9, 2022, and I went fishing with him on August 12th. He was doing so good. On Wednesday, August 17th, he woke up early, went to farmer's market, and then went on to work. But around noon, he came home. I was working from my home office, and I asked if he was okay. He said they sent him home because he was sick. When Yvonne came home and dinner came around, she suspected from the look in his eyes that he might be on something. But we asked him, and he said no. But he nodded off while we were watching TV. At 10 o'clock, I told him I loved him, and I went to bed. The next day, Yvonne and I awoke early and went to work. I texted him to see if he was feeling better, and I didn't get a response. At 11 o'clock, Yvonne texted me that she had called, but she didn't get an answer. I asked her if I needed to go home. She said she would go straight after work. But at 3 o'clock, I packed up my office. And at 3:20, while I was waiting at the red light in Frankfurt, she called me with those two horrible words. He's dead. After that, a lot is a blur. We learned that he had been sold fentanyl, and it's happened so often with this poison, he accidentally overdosed. It's so dangerous, you all. It just takes one. It just takes one. That was 1,174 days ago. Just over 3 years. And I miss him so very badly. Every one of those days has been close to unbearable. For the first few weeks or even months, I just felt numb. I did the things that needed to be done. I cried more than I had the first 58 years of my life. And although I have maintained my sobriety throughout this season of life, I would be lying if I said I was not tempted. When I walk into Kroger for groceries and that liquor store is right there, I've thought about it. I have. Our entire family enrolled in grief counseling offered through the Bluegrass Care Navigators, and that helped some. We found a Living Through Loss group in Lexington and began to attend. I prayed my serenity prayer so many times a day, I felt like I wore it out. I still do. It's the only way I can sleep. Thanksgiving came and went, with not a lot to be thankful for at our house. We didn't put up a Christmas tree. We just couldn't. We still don't. This past August, we celebrated his 30th birthday without him. It's hard, you all. This is definitely not the way it's supposed to be. But as the time was approaching to launch Celebrate Recovery at Northside in January of 2023, I had a decision to make. Was this hurt, this monumental hurt, this hurt of all hurts, was it going to sideline me? Or was I going to apply my program and practice these principles, both by example and by my words? Now, those that know me know that I'm a bit of a nerd, so I made a spreadsheet and I tried to map the 12 steps to the hurt of the loss of my son. And then I started the hard work, or I should say, I started to allow God to lead me through the hard work. And I trusted God towards both my recovery and our Celebrate Recovery launch at the same time. See, the main question I had to ask myself was this: do I really trust God? I mean, really? With my life? With my soul? With my son? With my future? And I made a decision, and I decided, yes, I do. I really, really do. And God is doing for me what I could not do for myself. I'll never be the person that I was before. This emptiness is going to stay with me for the rest of my life. But God is giving me more peace. And little by little, God gives me joy. Maybe not happiness, but joy. So I keep coming back, because it works if you work it. If you're a newcomer, let me simply ask you this: do you want more peace in your life? Would you like more joy in your life? See, in John 16, Jesus told us, in this world, you will have trouble. And I have. We tell people that recovery is not a quick fix, and it is not. But it's working for me. Isaiah 48:10 says, "See, I have refined you, though not as silver. I have tested you in the furnace of affliction." Now, I've had opportunity in my life to work in the copper mining industry, and some of the byproducts of that process are silver and gold and platinum. And I've seen the refiners at work. They put that silver into a crucible, and then they melt it with fire. Then the defects and the impurities rise to the top, and they scrape them off. Then they turn up the heat, and they do it again. Then they do it again. Then they do it again. As new impurities come to the surface and are removed, the refiner works carefully and continues until he reaches the point that when he looks into the surface of the silver, all he sees is a reflection of himself. Each week we pray that we might accept hardship as a pathway to peace. And most weeks I wish it said something else, like maybe a warm, comfortable recliner to peace. But it doesn't say that. See, the refiner puts a lot of value in the silver. If he didn't, he wouldn't refine it. And in my life, God has continued to turn up the heat. I'm not getting any younger. And when my days on this earth are over, or the Lord returns, and I'm standing before him, I'm hoping to hear him say, "Well done, good and faithful servant." And in my mind's eye, I can see myself looking over into glory, seeing the faces of people who have come through this program, people who experienced healing, and perhaps in some small way I was privileged to pay part of that. I see the faces of family and friends gone before me. I see my brother. I see my father and my mother. And I can see my son David smiling that 1,000-watt smile. Because the healing I believed in so long ago is very real. It may not have come in the way I expected, but it's very real. And Jesus is still in the healing business. And when I look at Jesus, I hope he will smile as he sees at least a glimmer of his reflection in my face. For our light and momentary troubles are achieving for us an eternal glory that far outweighs them all. So we fix our eyes not on what is seen, but on what is unseen. For what is seen is temporary, but what is unseen is eternal. Then I will be supremely happy forever. And my hope and my prayer is that you will be too. Thanks for letting me share.